You are watching the press preview, a first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. It's time to see what's making the headlines with Daily Mirror columnist Susie Boniface and assistant comment editor of the Daily Telegraph, Madeline. They'll be with us from now until just before midnight. Putin closes in on Kiev is the headline in the Eye, which says Russian forces are systematically targeting anyone who tries to leave the city or find food, leaving streets littered with dead bodies. While the Times reporter inside the capital says people there are ready to face the onslaught. The front of the Mirror is dominated by an image of the Ukrainian mum-to-be who was injured in the attack on the maternity hospital in Mariupol with her new baby girl. That image is also on the front of The Guardian, which leads with French President Emmanuel Macron's criticism of the UK's treatment of Ukrainian refugees. The Financial Times reports that G7 countries have ended all normal trade relations with Russia to punish it as hard as possible economically for the invasion. Former Cabinet Minister Jeremy Hunt tells The Telegraph Britain should increase defence spending to the same level as the United States. The Daily Express says Ukrainian spy chiefs believe President Putin is plotting a terror attack on Chernobyl and will blame it on Ukraine to hold the world to ransom. Not now, North Korea and India is the Star's headlines as Kim Jong-un tests a new rocket that can hit America and India accidentally fires a missile at Pakistan. The Sun claims Prince Harry has snubbed the royal family by refusing to fly home for his grandfather, Prince Philip's memorial service. While the Mail leads on the news that the Queen will no longer take part in Monday's Commonwealth Day service. And a reminder that by scanning the QR code you'll see on screen during the programme, you can check out the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers while you watch us. And we're joined tonight by Daily Mirror columnist Susie Boniface and assistant comment editor of the Daily Telegraph, Madeline. Welcome to both of you. I think you'll have to do the majority of the talking. My voice is increasingly leaving me. Let's start with the Eye and the front page there. The headline that Vladimir Putin is closing in on Kiev and all the intelligence suggests that is his target. Susie.
Yes, so, this is we're entering the third week of the war now. Kiev should have been, if everything was going according to the Russian plan, Kiev should have been taken in the first couple of days. The opposition should have just crumbled, whatever there was, and the people of Ukraine should have welcomed him and his troops with open arms. There's been a 40-mile convoy of tanks verging on Kiev for the past fortnight, being attacked and getting stuck, running out of fuel, and the cavalry has basically had to dismount. And it's now dispersed, it's headed into the trees and the mud around Kiev, and they're moving howitzers into place. Now, howitzers, for those who may not know, are long-range artillery, and they don't give you direct line of sight. They're indirect fire. Okay, so if the soldiers who are using them just do a calculation according to the information they're given at the other end, they've got some kind of spotter in Kiev who'll tell them where to point the guns. And the point of that is that you can be a long way away from the thing that you're hitting. You don't see the people that you're killing. And you have also very little idea as to what it is you're targeting. You're relying on the information you're being given. And this is the opposite of what this war was supposed to be. And it is the opposite of what happens in a war where you're winning. What happens when you are losing, this kind of thing. When you want to remove your soldiers from the things that you don't want them to see what they're doing. You don't want them to be part of it. You can't go face to face with the Ukrainians because they're going to fight you. And you have to move in long range artillery because you just can't get close enough. It's going to be brutal when it happens, but it is a sign of failure on Putin's part. And that's where we are.
Yeah, certainly the analysis that's been coming through in coming days is that not necessarily that he's losing, but he doesn't have the upper hand because he's on the back foot, as it were. He wasn't expecting to meet the resistance that he has done so far. Madeline.
Yes, that's absolutely right. And it does come from a place of weakness. But in a way, paradoxically, that weakness means that all bets are off. You see signs of that weakness all the time. The fact that the Russian forces are having to get Chechnyan mercenaries involved and people from Syria to fight for them, the fact that commanders, quite high-ranking commanders, are being killed. All of this very much, as Susie pointed out so brilliantly, suggests that things are not going to plan. But it also means that when things are not going to plan, they may resort to much more brutal and aggressive tactics that they might otherwise not have needed to deploy. Howitzer is a really good example. But there's also, the ongoing worries about chemical weapons. These are the kind of things that you do, as happened in Syria, when breaking a conventional siege doesn't work at using the conventional means. So you have to resort to these absolutely barbaric and inhumane atrocities. So the fear is that, having been pushed into a weakened position, having been cornered in that sense, that what will come from Russia next is, breaking all of the usual rules of war, perhaps even more than they already have been breaking them.
And time again, we've heard of the spirit of the people of Ukraine ready to fight for their land, and the Times saying that they're ready for the onslaught, they're expecting it, and they're prepared.
Yeah, they seem to have been, they've had plenty of warning, shall we say, the whole world has, this is what's going to happen. And they've used that time to fortify the city, to get art, treasures safely away and hidden underground. They've been building tank traps and stingers and things that can stop vehicles and shred tyres. They've been preparing. And any kind of urban warfare with an invading force and people protecting their homes is really messy and unpleasant. And you will kill 5 times as, I can't remember the ratio now, the ratio is 5 to 1. And I'm pretty certain, someone will correct me, I'm sure on Twitter if I've got it wrong, I'm pretty certain that you will lose 5 soldiers for every 1 civilian that you have to kill, and it's the other way around. But it's basically, it's a unsuccessful, unhappy thing for anyone to be trying to do, to take over a city, and especially when they have had so much warning and so much time to prepare. The Ukrainian defences have surprised everybody. They've surprised the West, who provided a lot of those defensive things. But, what they really need, and where they do seem to be having a want that isn't being filled, perhaps, is to have enough body armour, helmets, ration packs, medical packs. They're the things that they're going to need in the next stage of this war, as they start going more in close fighting, hand-to-hand combat with the Russians, who are going to start taking the city one building at a time.
Yes, and speaking to the fact that Russia doesn't have the upper hand, and they are on the back foot. Moving further into the Times, they're speaking of the third major general that Russia has lost as the army advances on the cities there, Madeline.
Yes, exactly. And this is one of a number of high-ranking soldiers to have been killed. And it suggests, well, firstly, that the Ukrainians have been placing a high priority on going for the Russian command and control, and they've had some real success on that. But it's also significant that such high-ranking officers are to be found on the front line in the first place. It is perhaps a measure of how morale is weakening, that they have to be there to urge their troops on, and just how badly the Russian attack has gone compared to their hopes and expectations of a speedy takeover of Ukraine.
Let's move on to the Mirror, excuse me, and their headline, their hope amid horror, and they've photographed the mum-to-be that we all saw pictures of, that was injured coming out of that maternal hospital. She's now had her baby daughter.
Yes, I should say, I need to correct myself. I did get it slightly wrong. In urban warfare, you need to have 5 attackers to 1 defender in order to take a city. And the Russians don't have the numbers. So I'm sorry if I slightly muffed it up when I was trying to explain it earlier on. But yes, this front page is a great picture of Mariana, the beauty blogger, who was pictured in the sort of the wreckage of the maternity hospital after it was bombed, and who was accused by the Kremlin and by the Russian embassy in the UK, who were absolutely disgraceful. And so because she was a blogger, therefore she must be acting. And they said that the blood on her face was makeup. it's quite genuine that she was pregnant. She's now got scabs on her face, fresh ones, as can be seen in that photograph. But luckily, she's had a healthy baby girl, Veronica, and one can only hope that she has a better outcome than most babies born in war, because she certainly deserves it. And I would hope that whoever operates the Russian embassy Twitter account is keeping their mouth shut about it tonight.
Madeline, to think that we were told that this was fake news.
It's unbelievable. It's a level of well, people call it disinformation, but I feel that that's kind of too weak for the sickening tactics that are being used, where you drop a bomb onto a heavily pregnant woman and a maternity ward, and then add insult to injury by accusing her of faking her own injuries. It's kind of like gaslighting on an industrial scale. And, you know, it's nice to see these stories of hope amid the rubble, but I can't help but be, you know, just utterly sickened by the kind of tactics that have been used on a regular basis.
Susie, the Express takes us into a story about a terror attack on Chernobyl that Putin is allegedly going to blame on Ukraine.
Yeah, now, so Chernobyl, which had a meltdown in 1986, has basically now, it's kind of got a dome over the top of it in which humans aren't really allowed to go. Robots go in there instead because it's still highly radioactive. And Ukraine has also buried other radioactive waste there from decommissioned reactors from the Soviet era. So it's a very radioactive sort of place. And as we all know, that there have been troops firing near nuclear power stations elsewhere in Ukraine. And the Russian troops took over the area where Chernobyl is at the start of the conflict, at the start of the war. And it's very easy when you have something like that to create a big accident. And we already know that the power has been cut to Chernobyl. The power is how you keep pumps working. It's how you keep things cooled down. It's how you keep things ventilated. It's how you keep the robots working and doing the decommissioning work and so on and so forth. The Ukrainian engineers in there seem to have been ejected or have been lost contact with. Belarusian engineers have gone in. And now there is a suggestion that what's being done in there by the foreign engineers who've come in is not keeping Chernobyl safe, but is in fact preparing some kind of accident, in quote marks, which will, you know, when Putin has to inevitably, as it looks now, find a way out of this or retreat, will sort of cause some kind of a horrible leak of radiation on his way out the door.
Madeline, just very quickly, we've just got time for the Express back pages and the story of Chelsea players being worried and concerned, uncertain about the future of the club, following on from Roman Abramovich being included on that list of those to be sanctioned.
Yes, absolutely. Now, it seems as though many insiders are saying that Chelsea's Barclaycard credit cards have actually been suspended, meaning that they've been left scrambling around wondering if they can afford to keep playing in spite of the sanctions that have been imposed on them, and with their home game against Newcastle happening this weekend. And it strikes me that this is a kind of, I guess, a micro version of what we're seeing across so many areas of politics and the economy at the moment, that we're sort of horribly exposed to this crisis in all sorts of ways, whether it's defence or food supply or energy supply. And with football, we're seeing that you can have a football club that is essentially owned by one person, which means that they're only, one decision away from a catastrophe if you suddenly find that the ownership can no longer subsidise the club, and putting even a club that seemed to be, such a kind of cultural icon as Chelsea Football Club, now wondering if it can afford to, bus its players in and play for the shirts and afford to host its home games.
Susie, you were shaking your head there.